his career. Betts was 4 for 5 at the plate with 5 RBIs. The Dodgers are off today. They start a 3-game series at San Francisco Friday night. The Angels beat Minnesota 4-3. The Angels are 69 and 77 with 16 games left in the regular season. They are still in contention for one of the 3 wildcard spots in the American League playoffs. More troubling news for the UCLA football program. Backup quarterback Pierce Clarkson was arrested on suspicion of felony assault with a deadly weapon. LAPD said the weapon was not a gun. Clarkson posted a $30,000 bail. A court hearing is set for October 3rd. Clarkson has been suspended from the team pending the outcome of his case. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
Heaven help the child who never had a home. Heaven help the girl who walks the streets alone. Heaven help the roses if the bombs begin to fall. Heaven help us all. Heaven help the black man if he struggles one more day. Heaven help the white man if he turns back away. Heaven help the man who kicks the man who has to crawl. Heaven help us all. Heaven help us all. Heaven help us all. Help us all. Heaven help us, Lord, hear our call when we fall.
KBLA Talk 1580. Sing it, Stevie. Man almighty. We're going to need some help right about now. And I am pleased to welcome into the conversation the Executive Director for the Center for Media Integrity of the Americas. He's a former U.S. ambassador dedicated to promoting greater mutual understanding between the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean. They're an independent entity that fosters high-quality journalism and public interest media. We sure need that right about now. Ambassador John Feeley, welcome back, and thank you for coming in on short notice to talk about the situation we find ourselves in. Good morning. Can you hear me, Ambassador? Are you on mute by any chance? I know you're overseas and we're connecting via Zoom. Okay, I guess we're having technical difficulty, but I know we'll be looking.
I think I'm here now. Hang on.
Yes, we have you here. Thank you for connecting on short notice here.
Not at all, Dominique, and thanks so much. I apologize for the boomer thumb mistake on my iPhone. I'm actually talking to you from Buenos Aires, but when I got the invitation to join you, I was really grateful, as I think I wrote to your producer, for the opportunity to kind of help me unpack a lot of this and see what it means for our country. And thank you for starting this segment with that beautiful song, Heaven Help Us All. Because I'll tell you what, for as much as politicians and political scientists and everybody else sort of talks about this, at the end of the day, you got to go back to that very human thought. Heaven help us all. What's going on in our country?
Yeah, it feels like a really fragile moment. It's been feeling like that a lot lately, but I think even more right now because it just the escalation of rhetoric that's happening right now on social media, in the regular media, and definitely among certain circles and crowds of conservatives, it's really alarming. I mean, you see calls for civil war. Laura Loomer saying that the left needs to be crushed using the power of the state, and Elon Musk said the left is the party of murder, and we don't even have a suspect in custody. I mean, I wonder if you could talk about that from the standpoint of journalism, which is what your organization does, but also from the standpoint of, de-escalation, which is one of the things that professional diplomats specialize in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to just underscore that I don't speak for the organization in this respect. These are my personal opinions. But it's true that journalists have an exceptionally important role to play right now. And it's also true that diplomats, what I did for a very long time, always work towards peace, always work towards de-escalation. It's really interesting. You mentioned something, civil war. And I got to confess, I'm one of those guys who is very suspect of conspiracy theories. I really don't like when people go to hyperbolic extremes, both by my personality and also because of the nature of what I did. But, if we're going to get highfalutin here for a minute, so stay with me. I know you will, but I don't want to alienate anybody out there who's listening to us. There's a German philosopher who described modern civil war as a molecular civil war. And what that means is there are brewing low levels of violence that can escalate at any time to epidemic proportions. You don't need like uniforms or organized legions. Sadly, hatred on its own seems to be enough. And this, I agree with you, is what we kind of seem to see all over the place. And I'm going to be very honest, this again, personal opinion. It's only coming from one sector. Everybody, and myself included, and I know you, the first thing out of your mouth when we contemplate what happened to Charlie Kirk yesterday in Utah is we condemn political violence. Full stop.
Right.
You don't have to go back to, the marvelous inspiration of an MLK, where violence doesn't stop violence. The only power to stop violence is love. But those are good words to remember in moments like now. And yet at the same time, we have to deal with the paradox that the guy who was killed yesterday was somebody who spewed hate. And how do we deal with that? And it's not new, right? This is something that other societies. As a matter of fact, there was a very good quote I read as I was looking at some of the news on this. That John F. Kennedy, right, 70 years ago, his biographer writes that he had become acutely aware of the difficulties of governing a nation so disparate in its composition, so tense in its interior relationships, so cunningly enmeshed in underground fears and antagonisms, and so entrapped by the history in the ethos of violence that Kennedy once quoted, sort of in desperation, a famous quote from history in Europe: "The suns overcast with blood, they whirl asunder and dismember me." And we have to keep in mind that we, the people, cannot let these forces dismember us right now.
Yeah, but it's agreed, but it's a very tall order at the moment. And I think it's particularly difficult for people, for Black people and people of color, because you have a person, and trans people, I would imagine too. I'm not one of those, but imagine also, because you have someone who is literally calling for your demise, for your annihilation, who's now murdered. And it's, of course, we condemn political violence. I always say this, no matter what your cause, you don't get to just kill people. That's not what you get to do. It doesn't work that way. That's morally wrong. But at the same time, folks are saying, well, if this person is working all day, every day to bring about my annihilation, why am I going to be sad that they're murdered? And I had another friend who went so far as to say, if we were at war, actually, you kill Nazis. You kill people that are trying to kill you, and called it self-defense. What would you say to that, Ambassador?
What I would say is that self-defense is absolutely a legitimate tactic for self-preservation. What I would also say is that I absolutely agree with you that Charlie Kirk represented the absolute worst of American racism. Charlie Kirk, there's several things that, and this is all social media, so I'm trusting that a lot of this are accurate quotes. He one time said, if I see a black pilot, I hope he's qualified.
Oh, yeah, he's on camera saying that several times, so it's
I'm
verified.
An old pilot.
Yeah. You
I'm
are?
an old pilot.
Really?
Let me tell you, I started my career flying. And you know what? If you are certified to get in there, you're qualified. That's reprehensible. He called somebody like George Floyd a scumbag. He attacked Martin Luther as awful and not a good person. I mean, there is no question. Charlie Kirk is the 110% absolute of somebody whose speech harms, hurts, and absolutely seeks to inspire the othering of black people, of brown people, of trans people, of anybody who's not a white Christian theocrat. And so I absolutely abhor and reject that. But where I have to say, I think we got to look a little bit beyond ourselves in this moment. And that's hard. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. If I'm working hard trying to make that end of the month and deciding whether I got to make the car payment or the electricity payment, I don't have a lot of time to think back on history and to, put this in a broader context. I'm thinking about survival, right? But we look naturally to our leadership for that. And really sadly, we don't have that right now. We don't have national level leadership. As a matter of fact, we have a president who introduced violence into modern American politics by the way he sort of did his 2016 campaign, which, he said, I'd like to punch him in the face, referring to somebody. He encouraged cops to knock the crap out of him. Those are the kinds of words that are disgraceful for a president. But we have to remember that the president is not the country. And I think that we have a serious job as people in our own lives. Because at the end of the day, let's be honest, you and I can talk here all day long, but the only place where we really will have first order effect is in our own lives. You actually have probably second order effects because you've got people who listen to you. But in our own lives, we got to practice love. We got to practice tolerance. We have to practice the opposite of what Charlie Kirk spoke about. Because if we use that same tactic on him, if we celebrate the killing of another human being, we actually lower ourselves to that level. And I know that sounds like Michelle Obama, when they go high, we go low. Hey, we're not talking about political debate here. We're talking about political violence. We're talking about assassination. In the political debate, listen, man, sign me up, put the gloves on. I'm ready to go into the ring on the debate. But it's at the pulling of that trigger where we must draw the line. And I think the only thing that I don't have any real great advice for anyone, but the only thing that I think we all can do that maybe will actually be self-soothing is to go out of our way to be a little bit better in our own personal lives, a little bit more caring, a little bit more forgiving, little less judgmental. You know what I'm saying?
A little bit more empathetic, perhaps. We're talking with Ambassador John Feeley. We'll continue the conversation. You're invited in if you have a question or comment. I know people are sitting on a lot of feelings around this particular incident, this moment in America. I'm Dominique DiPrima for KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part? They accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right, so we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2025 Nielsen report.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
It does, and we're talking with John Feeley, who is ambassador to Panama in a 28-year State Department career. He's now moved on, but he has certainly worked at high levels in solving much bigger problems than this one, although it's a pretty foundational issue of where we are going in our country. And we are talking with Ambassador Feeley about this moment, this perilous moment, the killing of Charlie Kirk. Some are calling it an assassination, a murder, and not the incident itself solely, but how it's impacting our country and how it sits in this, what appears to be an escalation of political violence. We had the lawmaker in Minnesota who was killed and another one injured. We have had, the beating of Nancy Pelosi's husband, and it feels like we are headed in the wrong direction when it comes to violence expressing itself in our politics. And I think that's the reason why it struck a nerve for a lot of people. You said you don't have any specific advice. We have some folks on the phone. I know people are sorting through their feelings, but it's hard to hold on to that. And of course I said empathy. You said we could do better and be better and make a bit of an effort to elevate our moral and ethical position in the world. The reason I said empathy is because Charlie Kirk famously said empathy was a woke concept that was undermining America.
Yeah, but Let me go back to the quote, and I probably got it a little bit wrong. I don't have it in front of me. Martin Luther King, right? I said, and I do mean that we collectively should do a little bit better, but I am very clear we in our personal lives should do better.
Yes.
You and me, we should strive to exhibit empathy when we can. MLK said that violence, Jeremiah in the Bible says violence begets violence. MLK said, violence never overcomes violence. Only love can overcome violence. We know all of these things. We've read them. Our grandmothers told them to us. And we know that that's the right thing to aspire to. And yet still, as you say, here's a guy who is the very antithesis of all of it. And what makes this harder for me, somebody like me, is not that I ever really followed Charlie Kirk, but when I saw him, and I certainly knew what he stood for and I knew what he said, I really hated the gleeful, sophomoric, bully boy attitude that he had about all of this stuff. The way he othered people with dismissive derision. I mean, this was a guy who clearly reveled in making black people and brown people and anybody that wasn't like him and, his again, white Christian theocratic mindset, feeling like they were less than. So everything that I try to do in my personal life is the opposite of that. And I, again, we're going to go back and we're going to say it a million times, deplore any political violence. But it raises a really interesting point. Let's just do a little thought experiment here, Dominique. What if Charlie Kirk hadn't been shot yesterday? But what if Charlie Kirk had some disease that attacked his vocal cords and he could never speak again? Would I be happy about that? You bet I would. Anything that silences short, and I say anything, short of one man killing another man, one man using the power of the state to silence free speech, which is what's going on right now in the government. Anything that would silence a hateful voice like Charlie Kirk's, you better believe that I'm going to feel a slight bit of, at the very least, relief. Now, where does the empathy come in? The empathy, I think, still has to be maintained in terms of thinking about Charlie Kirk's two kids, right? The sins of the father should never be visited upon the son. It's his fault, not the kid's fault, I should say, that their father was a hateful, spiteful man who, in the highest of Greek irony, died as almost a result of his own quotes about, I think that a few deaths each year from political violence are worth the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie Kirk said that stuff.
Yeah.
And, here's the irony of it. This guy catches a bullet at 200 yards from a sniper. What we are, and I know everyone's on tenterhooks, and this is the really sad thing, and I include myself in this criticism. We've all already got our thoughts about who the shooter is going to be. And I'll tell you a very interesting story. Many years ago in Washington, D.C., right after the 9/11 disaster, which we commemorate today, and we pray for all of the family members and survivors of that terrible day, I actually have a cousin who was in the South Tower who survived.
Wow.
And every time this year, I pray for her and I think about her and I reach out to her. But there was a guy in Washington, John Muhammad was his name, and he was known as the DC sniper. And for those of us who lived in DC at the time, this was awful because it's right after 9/11. The whole country is just like it is right now, on tenterhooks. We've been attacked. There's no question. And this guy starts driving around DC, picking people off with a high-powered rifle. The panic, the fear, I can't tell you. I remember my poor mom going to the supermarket and like running in a zigzag pattern because I think she saw it on TV. That's how you avoid bullets. It was ridiculous how we let fear creep in, but the fear was real and it was to a certain extent justified. Okay, they finally catch this guy. He's a mentally deranged individual with psychotic tendencies, and he's detached from reality, and he's doing a heinous thing. They catch him, they convict him, and whatnot. I got a really dear black friend of mine, somebody who has been very generous in explaining to me what it's like to be a black man in America. And he one time said to me, dude, you got no idea. Every time there's a mass shooting, every black family chat in America lights up with, oh God, I hope it's not a black boy. Now think about this. Yesterday, Charlie Kirk was killed. Not for 1 second did I ever question that the shooter's white. It happened in Utah. I have no idea who the shooter is. But what I am already beginning to think is, all right, who would want to kill Charlie Kirk? Well, it would be a liberal, right? As they say, a progressive. But progressives usually aren't sniper shooters. So who could it be? Well, maybe it's an American vet who got sniper training over the last 20 years and came back and got treated badly by the VA, and he broke, and now he is, anti-Trump or anti-conservative. Or maybe the shooter was a black guy or a Hispanic guy. We don't know. But at the end of the day, here's what I think. It doesn't matter. It was a human who made a terrible decision to take the life of another human. And that we all have to deplore, even though I'm the first to recognize that when these other shootings, school shootings, all the ones you've mentioned, all the political violence we've seen in the last several years, we get the thoughts and prayers crowd coming out of the Republicans, but nobody's ever going to touch guns. I hope, but I realize hope is pretty thin and it ain't a good strategy, but I hope that maybe this episode where the victim is a tried and true pillar of Donald Trump's MAGA movement, I hope maybe in the individual personal lives of people who are of that political stripe, that they maybe begin to think that there's a better way to do this. There's a better way to solve our policy differences, and it isn't by hate. And that's what I mean by we got to do better with empathy in our lives.
We got news, traffic, and sports right here. Then we will continue our conversation with Ambassador John Feeley. And you're invited in. So many questions in the chat. And the number is 800-920-1580. I'm Dominique DiPrima for KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. All 4 suspects are in custody for the August 31st shooting of Black Florida State University linebacker Ethan Pritchard in Havana, Florida. Sheriff Morris Young says Pritchard was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Ethan was not doing anything wrong in that area.
He remains in critical but stable condition. Kamala Harris blasted Joe Biden's 2024 re-election bid as a reckless mistake in her new memoir, 107 Days. She writes Biden's run was driven by ego, not judgment. Harris later replaced him as the Democratic nominee, but lost to Trump in the shortest presidential campaign in U.S. history. And Jay-Z is shutting down rumors of a new album. Cash Cobain says Jay-Z called him to say he's absolutely not dropping an album after Cobain hinted big music was coming. Memphis Bleak also confirmed Jay-Z reached out to clear the air. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Saving money on tires and auto repair services is a big deal. That's why Big O offers a low price guarantee on tires with big deals like this. Now buy 3 select tires, get the 4th tire free with paid installation during our September to Remember. Now at Big O Tires.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers won their 4th straight and increased their lead to 3 games over San Diego in the NL West. Mookie Betts highlighted a 9-0 win over Colorado with a grand slam, the 7th in his career. Betts was 4 for 5 at the plate with 5 RBIs. The Dodgers are off today. They start a 3-game series at San Francisco Friday night. The Angels beat Minnesota 4-3. The Angels are 69-77 with 16 games left in the regular season. They are still in contention for one of the 3 wildcard spots in the American League playoffs. More troubling news for the UCLA football program. Backup quarterback Pierce Clarkson was arrested on suspicion of felony assault with a deadly weapon. LAPD said the weapon was not a gun. Clarkson posted a $30,000 bail. A court hearing is set for October 3rd. Clarkson has been suspended from the team pending the outcome of his case. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, KBLA 1580 delegation, your health matters to us. We know that information is power, especially when it comes to prevention and treatment. That's why we're proud to introduce the brand new KBLA Health and Wellness Hub. This online space is built just for you, connecting our community to trusted health resources, culturally relevant care, and even access to diverse clinical trials and emerging therapies. Whether you're looking for information on common conditions, mental health support, or just want to stay on top of your wellness journey, we got you. And the best part, it's all on our website at KBLA1580.com. Accessible, empowering, community-focused. So just go to KBLA1580.com and click on the Health and Wellness Hub icon, because knowledge is power and your health is everything. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
Founded in Los Angeles in 1986, litigation powerhouse Quinn Emanuel has deep roots in the Los Angeles community. Since 2007, we have litigated some of the largest fires on the West Coast. We are proud to be the only AmLaw 100 firm in the country to represent wildfire victims, giving affected individuals, families, and businesses the same focus and individualized attention we devote to our Fortune 500 clients. BTI Consulting has repeatedly recognized Quinn Emanuel as among the 4 law firms in-house counsel least like to oppose in any litigation, and we are often deemed the most feared. And after securing over $80 billion for our clients in various matters firm-wide, we understand why. If you have been affected by the recent wildfires in Altadena and the Palisades and would like to discuss your situation further, please contact wildfire support at QuinnEmanuel.com or call us at 213-443-3050. Quinn Emanuel is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Be heard. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome back indeed. We're glad you are here. We are talking with Ambassador John Feeley, the former ambassador to Panama, and he is currently the executive director for the Center for Media Integrity of the Americas, but he's speaking on his own personal behalf this morning, bringing his expertise, though, in international diplomacy to this crazy, crazy moment that we are in. Ambassador Feeley, we'd like to go to Kwamel, calling us from Gardena. Good morning, Kwamel.
Yes. Peace, everybody. Good to meet you, Ambassador. So, to try to keep it as compact as possible, there's an idea, I put it in the chat earlier, of stochastic terrorism. And I remember Tom Hartman talking about it. And, it's just that whole thing of, if you ratchet up rhetoric enough, you can get somebody to do a thing for you in your name. And I think also what happens is kind of like what they say in wrestling is a kayfabe of sorts, and it once was betrayed by like Ted Cruz. like suppose they're going to the bathroom with another senator and saying, "Hey, that was good work out there." Like, but hold on, you're playing with people's actual lives, and like going out like not like using Ted Cruz alone to this, but dehumanizing folks to get a result out of them, and it causes these types of things. And I'll add one last thing and then get off. Just that whole sense of dehumanizing, and then what you saw with Elon Musk, C.J. Pearson, I could comment on him deeper, but I won't go there right now, is this whole thing of you see it happen, and it's a thing that the right is usually known for, but then they play this whole game of, oh, quick, remove us from responsibility. Go accuse the left and as hard as you can, like go project. And again, it's all part of like that same cycle that if you take if you have an American people that you don't educate on how to see through these things, it makes it really easy to fall for. And that's the thing we got to think tank out. I almost feel like we got to go back to the fairness doctrine and begin on the think tank point, pushing things back towards a good moderate medium and away from all this constant shift to the right garbage just because some dude whines. I thank you for your time. I'll take your comments off the air.
Thank you, Kwamel. A lot to unpack there, Ambassador Feeley.
No, but let me tell you, Kwamel's preaching some truth right there. There's a lot that he just said that I firmly stand behind. First is the issue of terrorism and how do you get people to commit terrorist acts? Absolutely, you're 100% right, and study after study shows this. You look at radical Islamic terrorism. We're talking jihadi bombers. How do you convince a dude walk into a public place and detonate himself? Right? Think about that. Think about the nihilism that's behind that. What you do is you play to his sense of desperation. You play to the fact that he has absolutely no future. Why? Because another has taken it away from him. In the case of, Middle East terrorism, it's always that the Jews have taken it away from him, or the great Satan, America, has taken it away from him. It's really unbelievable that while the names and the places and the ideologies change, the tactics don't change. So you're 100% onto something there when you point out that there have always been, influential voices. And let's face it, on the obit of Charlie Kirk, it says influencer, right? So he was an influential voice that instigated people to commit acts of violence, perhaps of terrorism. Every time we have a shooter at, any place in a school, and you find on their social media accounts all kinds of anti-government or whatever it may be, you have a dangerous combination of a psychotic break and somebody who's been influenced by a voice that has fanned the fires of hate and resentment. The second thing that Kwamel said, Dominique, which, man, I just got to really get behind him on that, is about education. Isaac Asimov was an old science fiction writer, but he was a very bright man in the 1950s, known as an intellectual. He has one of the greatest quotes I've ever read about our current moment. He said, "For fascism to succeed, you must first bedazzle the ignorant and then muzzle the intelligent." What we've had in America in the Trump administration and going back to the first administration, and frankly, I think for a long time, is we have devalued education and we have muzzled intelligent conversation like Kwamel and a lot of your other listeners are bringing to the show, where you can unpack ideas, you can disagree, you can be sort of supported in your ideas by facts, or you can have your version of reality undercut by somebody. But again, it's kind of like a muscle, right? It's kind of like sports. Once you have exercised that peaceful dialogue mechanism, and the only way to do it is through education. once you've exercised that, it acts as kind of a shield against the extremes of terrorism. And I've seen this in many places around the world. And I worry seriously that we have let that peaceful dialogue, that respectful dialogue in our state legislatures, in our school town halls, in the Congress and Senate of our nation, we've sort of let that muscle atrophy. And I think the only way we'll get that back is to educate a younger generation so that they recognize the value of it collectively.
Yeah, I mean, but okay, one thing I want to circle back to, you said in the Middle East, it's always the Jews that are blamed for doing something. But to be fair, right now we're dealing with, what's going on in Gaza. And I think it's important to say that there's real misery and the people being blamed are Israelis, not Jews. And I just want to make that distinction because I feel like there's a lot of disingenuous conversation going on right now where people are being labeled anti-Semitic for opposing a genocide.
I'll put an even finer point on it. What you're seeing in Gaza, I believe, is a genocide that is being perpetrated by one man and his extended government. Most Israelis do not support a genocide. Jews, worldwide Jewry, does not support a genocide. But you have the politics of a small country, and you have one man who is a very effective communicator and a manipulator. And so you're 100% right. But to the kid in the souk in Pakistan, he conflates, he mixes up Bibi Netanyahu with Israeli citizens, with Jews in Luxembourg or New York City or LA. And to them, it's just the Jews. And see, that's one of the things about when I said the Isaac Asimov comment, the ignorant. You bedazzle the ignorant. That's a statement of ignorance to equate Bibi Netanyahu with rabbis who preach nothing but peace, tolerance, and understanding.
Right.
They're both Jews.
And then the other side of the coin is what's happening here in the United States, where they're saying anyone who criticizes Israel is anti-Semitic. And when you do that, you also perpetuate that confusion that you're talking about, which causes endless problems.
Of course, I'm a whip out my white kid privileged education here. In Latin, that's called a reductio ad absurdum. It's a reduction down to absurd terms. You can't ever do that kind of analysis because if you do, it's just ignorance. So yeah, I agree with you completely. I criticize the government of Bibi Netanyahu. I absolutely do. I suffer from a distance, right? I want to be careful not to make it seem like, I'm feeling or having the equivalent pain as my Palestinian brothers and sisters, or for my Jewish brothers and sisters who suffered the attacks from Hamas on October 7th. But as somebody who tries to practice empathy in his life, I can feel for them. I can see that pain, but I can also see behind the ignorance that spurs that violence. It's when you do the othering of a group without being willing to use the intelligence that all of us have that can be cultivated through education to see in a much more granular way that not all Jews are Bibi Netanyahu, not all Palestinians are Hamas bombers, not all conservatives are Charlie Kirk hate spewers, and not all progressives are communists. Those kinds
and not all communists are killers either. I mean, let's not. I mean but that's a whole other show.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
My dad, may he rest in peace, was a communist. Let's start there. He most certainly was. Lifelong one, yes. But that's another show for another day. I wanted to point out, because we started kind of here before you were on the air, talking about the way that, in my opinion, people like Charlie Kirk exploit the pain of people in this country, many times radicalizing young white men who are struggling to get a job, who have problems in their own lives. And so my empathy extends over to those conservatives in that way. And to me, it's very much the same thing as what you're talking about when you talk about a suicide bomber.
Absolutely. And I think that that's really important. And that you know, I mean, I'm not blowing smoke at you here, but that it's evidence of your own intelligence to be able to discern the difference between a kid who didn't have a good family, who's white, who lives in the middle of the country, let's say, your stereotypical guy who's a gig worker. He's got a Lyft or an Uber gig. He's working in an Amazon fulfillment shop. He doesn't have any labor protections. He doesn't have a 401k. And, you know, he doesn't have the opportunities that he sees people apparently enjoying on his Instagram, right? Let's not forget the role that social media plays and that people like Charlie Kirk exploit tremendously effectively. So he sees the way other people are living. And he says, how come I don't have that? Why don't I have that? And those people are ripe for exploitation. And that's what people like Charlie Kirk did. And that's why I say I deplore the violence that took his life. I pray that it causes people who followed him to reflect for a moment and think, is that rhetoric that he put out there for the last 10 years, is that really the best way for me? Forget about social convivience and social well-being, but am I living better? Am I doing better? Am I getting a better job because of the hateful speech of Charlie Kirk? If we could even have that result on an individual level, maybe that might be, you know, the sort of prophetic silver lining of this. I don't know if that's going to happen, though, because the natural human instinct is to double down on whatever your fears drive you to believe. And let's make no mistake, those people are driven by fear and resentment. And when I say those people, I mean people who actively cheered on Charlie Kirk. They felt resentment because he told them that their jobs were being taken away by black, brown, immigrant people. He told them that they didn't have the same opportunities that they deserved because there were people who were other than them. And I think it's going to be a point of discussion. But I also really think that if we don't get a little bit of, and you can't do this from a government perspective, if we don't get a little bit of love into the equation, a little bit of going back to the basics, and I don't care if your basics are in Buddha, if they're in Yahweh, if they're in Jesus Christ, if they're in, you know, the trees and pantheism, you got to go back to those basic golden rules and treat other human beings as you would wish to be treated.
Ambassador John Feeley is my guest. We'll continue when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Thinking about going electric? Now is the perfect time. Electric vehicles cost less to run, don't need gas, and need fewer repairs than gas-powered cars. You can also save with federal and state tax credits, and in some areas, qualify for rebates on home charging stations. To learn more, visit www.breathesocal.org. That's www.breathesocal.org.
So many things, big and little, make you uniquely you. Your hobbies, dreams, career, family, and more. Addiction to drugs, including opioids and stimulants, can strip these away from you. Recover your life. Choose treatment for drug addiction and get back to what matters most. Find a provider and proven treatment option that's right for you at ChooseChangeCA.org. Recover you.
When you turn to the Employment Development Department, we'll help you get there. Whether it's support for you and your family while you find a new job, or the resources to focus on your recovery after illness or injury, we can help you move forward. From support while you bond with your newborn, to helping serve your family while your partner serves our country. Your EDD. We'll help you get there. For more information, visit edd.ca.gov.
If you're an African American mom who is pregnant or have a baby under 6 months old, You deserve care that lifts, listens, and lasts. Black Infant Health is for you. It's a free program with individual support, group sessions, and resources to start your mothering journey. BIH makes space for moms and their families to create community. Learn more about the programs in Los Angeles County. Check us out at blackinfanthealth.org.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Ambassador John Feeley is my guest. We maybe do a little speed round. I've got a few questions for you. I want to try to squeeze in before we run out of time. And we have Jeff M. in the chat saying, I don't condone violence, but I do respect karma. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I have to say I'm cynical enough to have recognized the irony of this. This is a man who literally died by his own hate speech. And so karma is a thing. Again, doesn't matter what faith tradition you have. And so I can understand that statement.
Yeah. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, wrote on Truth Social, the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all. He's calling for flags to be at half-staff. For me, as a black woman, I hear that as I'm celebrating a person. He was admired by all, meaning anyone that's relevant to my president admired a man who was calling for my demise and destruction. That feels hurtful to me. I mean, I understand that's your friend and your supporter and you're going to mourn him. But the way that statement is put, it feels like an attack on people that were under attack by Charlie Kirk.
I think it should feel like an attack. I think the reality of that statement can clearly be undercut because Charlie Kirk was not admired by all. That's just a simple fact. I would argue that most of the country, and certainly the 70-odd million people who voted for Kamala Harris, didn't admire Charlie Kirk. So yeah, you're 100% right. Trump is drawing a line there saying, by all, only those who agree with me. Secondly, I think that you sort of have to look, going back to our earlier comment about karma, talk about karma. Trump's about to get exposed in Epstein files for the first time with just a scintilla of bipartisan support in the Congress. And he gets this massive diversion. I don't know if karma cuts both ways, Dominique, but I'll tell you, this diversion, I think we can confidently predict that there is going to be flyovers. Trump is going to try to red, white, and blue Charlie Kirk's funeral to the point where it becomes hagiography and canonization. Those are big words, but basically where it becomes, this was the greatest American who ever lived. And I fundamentally reject that view. Again, I decry the political violence. I condemn it that took his life. But I, for one, as an American, will not be unhappy to have that voice not spewing hate.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Charlie Kirk was murdered for speaking truth and defending freedom, and he goes on and on. Of course, President Joe Biden says there's no place in our country for this kind of violence. I sends condolences. Barack Obama, this is despicable violence that has no place in our democracy. Didn't see any of that from the current president. I'm not trans, but if I was trans, I feel like I might have looked at this differently, because literally he was calling for the annihilation of trans people, and actually his rhetoric probably did lead to violence and possibly death for some trans people, like not in theory, in real life.
Well, Dominique, while we were on a commercial break, I was just looking at the headlines, and the Wall Street Journal is reporting that in the weapon that was found, there were unspent cartridges, and on those cartridges were written pro-trans messages and anti-fascist messages, which, we can never get ahead of an investigation, but would lead somebody to believe that it could be a trans person who, in fear of being annihilated by Charlie Kirk, or what Charlie Kirk was saying should happen to him and to other trans people, decided incorrectly, wrongly, ethically and morally incorrectly, let me stress that, to take Charlie Kirk out before Charlie Kirk took him out. So once again, we're back to our listeners' view about karma. But think about this, and it's really important. Okay, this guy took a shot and he killed him. He's on the run. He's going to get caught, and that that guy's life is almost going to be worse than what happened to Charlie Kirk, who went out in a relatively short amount of time. That guy's going to spend the rest of his days in jail. Guy, gal, we don't know, but that being who made that fateful and morally incorrect choice to pull a trigger, he did so because they back the cause of trans rights for at least the short and medium term.
We have a minute here, Ambassador. What would you like to leave us with as we're facing calls for actual civil war from folks on the right?
I think I can only leave us with the quote that we had from the start, Martin Luther King. The only force capable of overcoming hate and violence is love. People need to practice that more in their lives. Individually, they need to recover, as you said, and develop and work on a sense of empathy. And like the song you started this episode with, heaven help us all, Dominique. Heaven help us all.
Ambassador Feeley, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate the conversation.
I appreciate you.
And I think we really do, when I say we, I'm talking about progressives, but I'm talking about Black Americans. We have been the moral leadership of the world for decades and decades. And no matter how tempting it is to take another route, I think we have to hold the line on that position now through this administration and through these crazy, crazy times. We're going to pivot to some music, some palate cleansers for your mind, body, and spirit. We'll be joined by Victor Orlando when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. All 4 suspects are in custody for the August 31st shooting of Black Florida State University linebacker Ethan Pritchard in Havana, Florida. Sheriff Morris Young says Pritchard was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Ethan was not doing anything wrong in that area.
He remains in critical but stable condition. Kamala Harris blasted Joe Biden's 2024 re-election bid as a reckless mistake in her new memoir, 107 Days. She writes Biden's run was driven by ego, not judgment. Harris later replaced him as the Democratic nominee, but lost to Trump in the shortest presidential campaign in U.S. history. And Jay-Z is shutting down rumors of a new album. Cash Cobain says Jay-Z called him to say he's absolutely not dropping an album after Cobain hinted big music was coming. Memphis Bleak also confirmed Jay-Z reached out to clear the air. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Saving money on tires and auto repair services is a big deal. That's why Big O offers a low price guarantee on tires with big deals like this. Now buy 3 select tires, get the 4th tire free with paid installation during our September to Remember now at Big O Tires.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers won their 4th straight and increased their lead to 3 games over San Diego in the NL West. Mookie Betts highlighted a 9-0 win over Colorado with a grand slam, the 7th in his career. Betts was 4 for 5 at the plate with 5 RBIs. The Dodgers are off today. They start a 3-game series at San Francisco Friday night. The Angels beat Minnesota 4-3. The Angels are 69-77 with 16 games left in the regular season. They are still in contention for one of the 3 wildcard spots in the American League playoffs. More troubling news for the UCLA football program. Backup quarterback Pierce Clarkson was arrested on suspension